Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is finally here, the college football 2024. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is finally here. The college football 2024 preseason FPI has been released. Normally, this comes out before the NFL draft, but I do think they waited about a month and a half because of the transfer portal, the spring window, whatever. The spring window really didn't have a ton happen in it. So I don't think the rankings really would have been affected that much, but this is the baseline. This is what people are going to reference when they talk about, FPI top 25 teams, things like that. It's very important, believe it or not, where you start out, which could theoretically be a flaw in the FPI model in general. But nonetheless, guys, I will say a few of these rankings did surprise me, and I'm an analytical based person. I understand how they do this, but seeing Ohio State at number 4, a little bit surprising. Georgia at number 1, we all know that was probably going to happen. You could make the argument, well, maybe Ohio State has the better overall roster. Some people saying Ohio State possibly the most talented roster we've seen in a long time with everyone returning. But when it comes to the FPI, we have to understand it weighs heavily on returning QB production. And Ohio State, yes, they do have Will Howard. He was decent, the transfer QB, but you're looking at Georgia with Carson Beck, and obviously their defense is always good. They're top 2, top 3 in terms of recruiting. They're always going to have one of the best, most talented rosters. You couple that with a returning quarterback who's projected to be a top 5 pick, it's not surprising they're number 1. Oregon at number 2, Dylan Gabriel. Probably the most underrated transfer portal pickup. He's a stud quarterback. He legitimately could win the Heisman. That's how good he is. He could have a very similar year to Bo Nix. I think he's comparable to Bo Nix, maybe even a little better of a passer. You've got Texas at number 3 in front of Ohio State. Quinn Ewers, returning QB. Texas was really good last year. They made the 14 playoff. And then you've got Ohio State. You can see Alabama and Ohio State very close in terms of overall points, just 0.3 separating. Alabama, Jalen Milroe, returning QB. So you can see maybe why Ohio State's a little bit lower. Now, in general, when it comes to the FPI and you're looking at these overall ratings, basically what this means, you can see 26.8. That means that on a neutral field, Georgia against the most average team in college football, let's take for example, which is Illinois. On a neutral field, Georgia would be 26-point favorites over Illinois. That's basically what it means. Or 26-point favorites over Arizona State, as Illinois and Arizona State right now are the most average teams in all of FBS. At least that's what they say. So that's just really what it means. But Georgia at number 1, they start about 2 points in front of Oregon. And then you do have Texas, Ohio State, Alabama. Listen, people are going to be maybe a little bit surprised. Alabama, Nick Saban gone. But they return a quarterback who's going to be top 5 in terms of early season Heisman. They're always going to have one of the most talented rosters in college football. Yes, they lost Caleb Downs. They were going to lose Caden Proctor. Then they got him back. They're loaded. They're loaded on both sides of the ball. Now, maybe with the new coach, it's going to be a little bit tougher. We'll see. Possibly the SEC with the additions of Texas and Oklahoma. But in terms of these top 4 teams right here, Georgia, Oregon, Texas, and Ohio State, if you look at when we do the 12-team playoff predictions and you see 100 different analysts do it, I would say pretty much every single analyst is going to have those 4 teams in their playoff guaranteed, unless one of them just goes completely off the rails. You do have that game, what is it, week 5, Ohio State at Oregon. It's going to be crazy. I know Georgia has the week 1 game against Clemson, neutral site. Well, I guess it is kind of a neutral site because it's in the South, but isn't that game in Atlanta? And it's a noon start. And then you do have Texas. Texas has a big game early at Michigan week 2. So there's some big games. Ohio State really does not have any big games, at least through the first 4 weeks. And then they've got that game against Oregon. You do have Penn State sitting at number 6. So this is really a year where Penn State, they've got to make the playoff. They've got a returning QB. They always seem like they're right on the outside looking in when it comes to the 4-team playoff. I think they're going to make it probably as a 10 or 11 seed. I don't even think you can call them seeds, just ranked 10 or 11th probably. And they'll probably be on the road in the first round of the playoff. Notre Dame sitting at number 7. That's a pretty high initial ranking for Notre Dame. Riley Leonard, Marcus Freeman. Can he really put it together and get get Notre Dame into the playoff? I guess we'll see. Notre Dame has a weird thing to where no matter what Notre Dame finishes, they cannot get a first round bye. And by the way, I do think those first round auto buys it's going to be a major issue, because what's going to happen with the SEC and the Big Ten being way better than every other conference, you're going to have an ACC team automatically get a bye. You're going to have a Big 12 team automatically. Well, I'm not sure if they'll. Yeah, I guess they will automatically get a bye, considering it's Power 4 now, not Power 5. But, you're going to have possibly an Oregon or an Ohio State be seated lower and have to play a first-round game on campus, as opposed to a Utah or a Kansas, whoever wins the Big 12, getting a higher seed and actually getting a first-round bye. It could be an issue, because when you treat the conferences equally, which is what this model is, because the first 4 teams, one from each conference, gets a bye, and the conferences aren't equal because they're not. We know the SEC and the Big Ten are way better. It becomes an issue. But we'll see what happens with Notre Dame. Oklahoma, highly thought of right now. It's going to be tough for Oklahoma in the SEC. Number 8, their preseason ranking, Brett Venables. I guess we will see. Jackson Arnold, the former 5-star, played a little bit last year. You do have Tennessee, their young quarterback, Nico Lamanleva. They're at number 9 right now, in front of Missouri. Yeah, Missouri has an easy schedule. I was looking at Missouri's schedule. I could see them as a fringe playoff team. I think people are kind of overvaluing Missouri based off of that win against Ohio State. When Ohio State, what were they on? Their third-string quarterback, Lincoln Kienholz. It was a wash of a game. I think it was the Cotton Bowl. You do have Florida State sitting at number 11. DJ Uiagalelei, the transfer. We will see transferring from Oregon State. What a weird career he's had. I guess that's kind of what happens now when you get the auto transfer and you don't have to sit out a year. Originally at Clemson, transfers to Oregon State, and now at Florida State. And I do think he is an underrated quarterback. They need to utilize his legs, especially on third and short, fourth and short. He should be an auto first down, just sneaking the ball. He's such a big body dude. You do have Michigan at number 12. Not too surprised. I'm very, what's happened with Michigan is just with the quarterback position. I thought they were for sure going to try and get someone in the portal, but they're sticking with their guys. We will see. I could see a 3-loss season for Michigan. They got that game week 2 against Texas. They've got a few other tough matchups. Ohio State on the road. And obviously Jim Harbaugh is now gone. LSU is always a mixed bag. They lose a lot. They lose their top 2 receivers. They lose the Heisman Trophy winner, Jaden Daniels. The big thing with LSU, they think they're going to have an improved defense, and it would be hard for them not to have an improved defense based on how bad it was last year. A&M at number 14. Yeah, so A&M is always going to be ranked high in these analytical rankings because of how talented their roster still is. Although you would think, they lost a lot of guys to the portal that were 5-stars. You'd think they'd be ranked a little bit lower. Clemson at number 15. I think that's fair for Clemson. Clemson, people underrate them because they hear the narrative that Dabo Swinney never uses the portal, and it's true, but they still recruit very well, especially on the defensive side of the ball. They do lose Will Shipley, although he was kind of not that he was a bust of a 5-star, but he wasn't as good as I thought he was going to be. Cade Klubnik returns, starting for his 3rd year now, so he has legitimate experience. And they've got that huge game against Georgia, very likely going to be one of those lower scoring early season games that they lose. But now with the 12-team playoff, if you lose 24-17 in week 1 against Georgia in a neutral site game and you're in the ACC, you should be fine even if you suffer 2 more losses, honestly, or maybe 1 loss. I don't know. It just depends how good the ACC is. Ole Miss, they're definitely a team everyone's talking about. They utilize the transfer portal like crazy. They did lose Judkins, their number 1 running back. They returned Jackson Dart. They got 2 premier pass rushers. So yeah, Ole Miss to me is a fringe playoff team. We'll see. How about the number 1 ranked team out of the Big 12 playing their home games at Arrowhead Stadium and an MLS soccer stadium? That's what's going to be happening to Kansas. And what a turnaround for Kansas's football program. They return a ton. It'll be interesting to see what happens with them. But right now, initially, hypothetically, according to these rankings, they would be in the playoff because they're the highest ranked team from the Big 12. So they should have the best chance to win the Big 12 conference, at least according to these analytics. You do have USC at number 18. Yeah, USC with Lincoln Riley, they're always going to be talented on offense. It's a massive step up in terms of competition going to the Big 10. They've got some big non-conference they do have that big week 1 non-conference game against LSU. I think that's a great opportunity for them. That game's in Las Vegas. Not your fans are not going to have to travel very far. USC, the terrible Alex Grinch defense, he is gone now. They could potentially be a fringe playoff team, although it is unlikely based on, their schedule and also just how bad they've been on defense recently. Auburn at number 19. I think that's got to be, that's a typical overrated SEC team to me. Florida at number 20, similar, I think. Those teams should probably be slotted 4 or 5 spots lower, but you do have to understand those teams do have more talent than all of these other teams. It's just they're in the SEC, so they're very likely going to drop more games. I would be shocked if Auburn or Florida made the playoff at this point. Louisville at number 21. They had a decent year last year, kind of tailed off towards the end in the ACC. Maybe they've got an outside shot at making the 12-team playoff. Kansas State is a team a lot of people are talking about in the Big 12. They're going to be a contender to possibly win the Big 12 conference along with a Kansas, along with an Oklahoma State, along with an Arizona now in the conference. Even after losing their head coach, they were able to retain pretty much their entire roster. Normally we see now in this day and age, the head coach leaves, he takes his quarterback, he takes the best skill position players. That did not happen at Arizona. So Arizona is an interesting team to look at. You do also have Miami, Cam Ward. A lot of people like them. Miami is always the same thing, at least under Mario Cristobal the last 4 or 5 years. They're like a fringe top 25 team, and because they're in the ACC and they always have decent talent at the start of the year, we always think Miami's going to be better, and they always end up like 8-4, 7-5. We'll see what happens with them. I do like the Cam Ward addition. I thought he was going to go to Ohio State, and they paid out some money to get him. You do have SMU now in the ACC. SMU is going to be good. I think SMU analytically is like the number 4, number 5 team in the ACC. So it'll be interesting to see if they were still in a group of 5 conference, they would probably be the number 1 option in terms of getting that group of 5 auto bid. That's going to be very likely the number 12 overall ranked team going on the road to the number 5 team. Oklahoma State, Ollie Gordon returning. So yeah, we'll see with Oklahoma State. Utah a lot lower than people expect. A lot of people think Utah is going to be the team possibly to be ranked 4th overall, because if you win the Big 12, you're very likely going to be ranked 4th. And I know a lot of people have predicted them. I think I predicted them maybe right after the season when I was doing my initial preseason rankings. So Utah is there. Cam Rising returning again. I will say people do rag on Cam Rising like he's in his 8th year. I believe this is just his 3rd year where he's starting, to be fair, because he's had like 4 or 5 injuries. But yeah, I mean, he started his career at Texas. He started back in like 2014. He started like when Thomas Edison was still alive or something. And listen, Utah, we'll see what happens with them. NC State is another team I've heard a lot about. I've seen people rank NC State inside of their top 15s. And you're talking about an ACC program that's going to have winnable games. I don't know what NC State's non-conference schedule is, but I would imagine it's probably very manageable because people have liked them a lot. Texas Tech, there's a lot of hype around Texas Tech. I believe they sold out all of their season tickets again. They've got that brand new end zone renovation out of the Big 12. The Big 12 is just like, look at this. Big 12, Big 12, Big 12, Big 12, Big 12, Big 12, Big 12. It's just such a mosh pit. All of these teams are ranked in between 20 and 40. You've got Texas Tech, you've got TCU. How about Washington? In the national title last year, they lose everyone. They're 31 now. I think Washington's probably going to go 7-5 this year, maybe 6-6. I do not think they're going to be that good. UCF now they've been in the Big 12 for a year. But yeah, I like UCF. I'm a fan of their program. South Carolina out of the SEC. Kentucky out of the SEC, 33-34. West Virginia, they've got that huge non-conference week 1 game against Penn State. That's going to be a noon start time opening weekend. West Virginia fans not happy about that. They wanted a 7:30 game considering I think they had to play in the whiteout game. I don't know if it was the whiteout game, but it was a night game. I do remember that. Colorado and Deion Sanders getting an initial ranking of 36. I think Colorado's probably a 7-5 team, personally, which would be an improvement for them after going 4-6 last year. Iowa sitting at number 37. Always a great defense, bad offense, but now they have a new offensive coordinator, so we'll see. Do they still have Cade McNamara? Is he still on? Because he suffered a season-ending injury last year against Penn State on the road. Oh, you know what? I think Penn State's whiteout game last year was against Iowa. It's all coming back to me now. You do have Oregon State at number 38. So Oregon State still technically in the Pac-12 or the Pac-2, whatever you want to say. But they will be playing a de facto group of 5 schedule. They've got like 6 opponents or maybe 9 opponents that are in the Mountain West. So Oregon State, you know what's weird about this? So is Oregon State going to be, how does a conference championship game work? Do they just automatically face Washington State at the end of the year in their conference championship? How would they make the playoff? As a group of 5 auto bid? No, I don't think they would be. I think they would have to be like 11-1, and then they would make it as just an at-large Power 4 team. I think that's how it would work. You do have Wisconsin at number 39. Yeah, Wisconsin is one of those Big Ten teams that have feasted on being in the West. It's not the case anymore. I think they're probably gonna go 7-5. Honestly, UCLA, decently thought of at number 40, but now in the Big Ten, it's going to be very tough. Nebraska at number 41, very easy schedule. We'll see what happens. I know they've got the young 5-star QB, Dylan Raiola. Now, whether or not he starts right away, I think Nebraska needs to be careful because a lot of times true freshman QBs struggle early. And in this day and age with the transfer portal, if he has a bad first year, he could very easily transfer out. You do have North Carolina losing Drake May at 42. They seem to have some stability with Mac Brown. We'll see. California at 43. California, pretty highly thought of in the ACC. Arkansas at 44. You do have Rutgers. Rutgers has really turned around their program. An initial ranking inside of the top 50. When's the last time that's happened? Maybe last year. I don't know. But they were really horrible 5 or 6 years ago. They've turned it around. Maryland at 46. They lost Tagovailoa, so we'll see. Iowa State at 47. You know, they're always a decent program. Boise State at 48. Boise State out of the Mountain West, so that could be a potential group of 5 auto bid, Boise State. And I do like Boise State this year. They got some pretty interesting transfer. I know they got a transfer 5-star QB from USC, I want to say. I don't know if he's going to start, but Boise State had a really good end of their year last year, and they made their interim head coach their full-time head coach. He was their defensive coordinator. Mississippi State at 49. They're a 5-7, 6-6 team. Virginia Tech is interesting. A lot of people like Virginia Tech. They're going to have an easy early season schedule, and I am rooting for Virginia Tech to be very good this year. I think it would be cool for college football. It's a great home environment. So Virginia Tech right now with an initial ranking of 50. James Madison out of the Sun Belt looks like they're going to be the best team in the Sun Belt by far with an initial ranking at 51. Duke losing Riley Leonard out of the ACC. You've got 3 ACC teams, kind of all mid teams, Pittsburgh and Georgia Tech. You do have Baylor, UTSA out of the American, so UTSA going to be a contender for possibly that auto bid spot in the playoff from the group of 5. Northwestern, they're not going to be playing at Ryan Field. That got knocked down. They're going to be playing at a stadium like on their practice field right next to Lake Michigan. You do have Boston. I think Boston College is ranked pretty high for this at 58. Stanford at 59. Purdue at 60. All right, I think that's enough in terms of looking at some of these teams. Maybe I'll see if anyone can. I mean, Vanderbilt surprisingly is 76. Normally, I think Vanderbilt is lower than that. There's Fresno State, so that's who Michigan faces in week 1. Fresno State, it doesn't look like they're going to be very good this year. But traditionally, Fresno State is normally decent. I don't know, maybe that is good for them, but just looking at the rest of these rankings really doesn't surprise me. Western Kentucky opens on the road at Alabama. That's a 7:30 game on ESPN. And there's more rankings. Akron opens on the road at Ohio State. That's a 3:30 game on CBS. And Kent State is listed right now as the worst team in all of FBS. You do also have Temple there. Temple opens with a Friday night game on the road at Oklahoma. And you can see Florida International. Kennesaw State enters the fray as the newest FBS team as well. But those are just the initial rankings. And then I believe it's not cut off. I hope it's not. But you can see the playoff chance. This is completely different from last year with now it expanded to 12 teams. And, this is just a model. We can say for sure almost without, unless there's a crazy injury, Georgia, I would put it like a 98, 99, I don't know, maybe like a 97% chance. Oregon, it would be shocking if they missed the playoff. Texas, it would be very surprising. Ohio State, it would be very surprising. And then you kind of get to some teams to where you could see either way, like an Alabama, depending on their schedule, Penn State, Notre Dame. You know, if Notre Dame loses 3 games, are they really going to make it as an independent? I don't think so. At 9-3, they'll probably put SEC or Big Ten teams in over Notre Dame. It just depends. You do also have Oklahoma. I don't think Oklahoma's going to make the playoff. Tennessee, fringe. A lot of people are going to pick Missouri. FSU, obviously, possibly being the auto from the ACC. It just depends. Clemson's going to be there as well. Michigan, the defending national champs. So that is just the preseason rankings, I will say. And then you look at, I think it's a resume, and then you can go to strength of schedule. Yeah, I did do this. If it'll load, go to resume, and then go to remaining strength of schedule. And Florida right now has the toughest schedule. Look at all the SEC teams with the toughest schedule. And that's just based off of, you have to understand when it comes to these FPI rankings, they lean heavily on recruiting. So all the SEC by far in terms of recruiting, they're going to be number 1. So in terms of these rankings, it's going to reflect it. And all these SEC teams are going to have the toughest schedule just in terms of that. But either way, guys, that is just a little preview here in terms of some actual rankings for the 2024 college football season. That's going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.